and operated. So that would be my, that's the intention of the bill, and I think that's spelled out on page 7. The qualifications of the inspectors are spelled out there, and they apply to the certification process of the industry's own inspectors, and I commend the industry for bringing forward these suggestions, because I think it raises the bar and puts California ahead of many other places by defining the certification and allowing the state to so certify. And the state inspector should have no less a level of expertise.
Mr. Margette.
Yes, Mr. Torlakson, I allowed you in your efforts to bring this to public focus, and I think that's an important thing, and I think that we should certainly move the process along, and I think that you're cognizant of that. And I think at least that's the mood I feel from the people here. And I think that really an attempt for you to have a balanced approach on this, you know, keep in mind, I think that these amusement parks do not want to have an unsafe amusement park, because that is not in their best interest. They are going to be out there trying to, in their very best way, to be able to get as many customers as they can. And I've got to tell you, if there's unsafe amusement parks, then they're not going to have the volume of business, and I just can't believe that that's something that they want. And I think that the other thing, if we have lost public confidence in these amusement parks, and I think that we really have a challenge to restore that. And I don't know that that's necessarily the part of the legislature to restore that, but I do think that it's incumbent upon those who are involved, people who are in the amusement park industry and yourself, to make sure that some type of good, well-crafted legislation comes out of these hearings, so that we're going to do that. And I have a bill to present, unfortunately, but what I would like to do is see the process move along, and then if it gets to the Senate, when it gets to the Senate side, if there's any substantial amendments to this, I would like to have it come back to this committee. If you know, with your approval, Mr. Chairman, I think that we need to do that, because I think that that's you've got a great bill, and I think that if with your talents to be able to pull everybody together on this thing, I think you can have something that is a good product for the state of California. That's what I'm interested in. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Margette.
We have one other opposition witness.
Yes, I'm Ann Kelly here today on behalf of SeaWorld in San Diego, and basically most of the provisions in Mr. Torlakson's bill are very supportable. There are a few concerns, as Mr. Jensen outlined, and actually having listened to Mr. Torlakson's description of some of the amendments today, they may well in fact have solved some of the issues, for example the definition of a serious injury. I just want to leave the committee with one statement, and Mr. Margette basically said it. There is not an amusement park in this state that wants to have a death or an injury. You cannot imagine what worst nightmare can occur. And particularly if you were the person who was at fault, you want people to come to your parks to enjoy themselves and to know that they're going to have a safe, fun time. And I don't think I can think of few exceptions, perhaps plane crashes, where there is in fact a serious injury or someone dies. The publicity that surrounds our particular event is not just local or statewide. It becomes a national news item. And so I don't think there are any secrets in this business. And I believe that 99.9% of the parks, particularly in this state, employ the best safety engineers possible to make sure that those rides work. So we want to work with Mr. Torlakson to make sure that in fact everybody does that, and I think as the bill moves along we'll be able to resolve most of the technical issues, and the devil is in the detail. And I think fundamentally we need to make sure that state regulation is indeed going to make a difference, because we do have amazingly safe parks right now. Thank you.
Mr. Knox.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. Before we concluded the testimony here, I just wanted to take the opportunity to commend Tom Torlakson for bringing this legislation, and particularly commend him for strengthening the legislation today. I think the amendments taken make the bill better and stronger than it was previously, and that's the kind of bill that I think we're needing to produce. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Wally.
Ms. Thomas.
Yes, Terry Thomas on behalf of the Walt Disney Company, and without belaboring the point or the comments made by Mr. Jensen, let me say that we, as part of the coalition, support the comments made by Mr. Jensen. I also, though, want to say that despite maybe some rumors to the contrary. We believe that this collaborative process that we've been engaged in with Mr. Torlakson and his staff has really been a good and honorable one, and that we have tried to come to the table in good faith and to acknowledge that there are some improvements that can be made in the regulation of amusement parks in California, and we want to definitely continue those discussions. We believe that many of the provisions in the bill, which came out of those collaborative discussions, as a matter of fact, and those have been outlined for you, they have to do with the training, the qualification of the inspectors, the insurance requirements, the patron safety. We believe that all of those provisions set an incredibly new high bar for the amusement park industry in California. We're proud of the parks and the job we do at Disneyland in particular in California. We think that there are a number of other parks in California that could actually do well to come up to the standards that we have. But I do have to state for the record that we still, I think, well, two things. One, unfortunately, we have not been able to have a look at the amendments before today, so I really can't comment on them. I suspect they're going in definitely the right direction. One of the things that I hear, though, is in the definition of the serious injury. It still sounds to me, and I could be wrong because I don't have them before me, but it still does sound like they address themselves to anything that requires treatment by a physician or someone who's working under the standing order of a physician. To me, that sounds like that could be anything from a sprained wrist to a people work under standing orders of physicians for a wide range of things, so I think we'd want to work on narrowing that definition.
It does specifically exclude a number of...
I understand that.
minor
I understand that, yes.
Okay.
But I think that the net is still probably pretty broad. I think we'd probably have to go back to the medical dictionaries and see what's still in that loop, and we certainly want to and be willing to do that. I think we also believe, absent having seen these amendments again, that there are still a number of multiple and overlapping layers of inspection, and I think we've cited those in the letter that we've made available to the committee. There are at least 5 different sections in the bill that all speak to different types of inspections, and I think we would do well to go back and see. We're not quite even sure how those fit together, how all of those overlapping sections relate to the 25% of the parks to be inspected, not more than 2 in a 5-year period, and do some of those other inspections and some of those other provisions of law fit into that overall overarching section. So I think that we would do well to sit down at the table and go through the bill with a fine-tooth comb and try and make sure it really makes some sense, and we certainly want to engage in that. Thank
Member
you.
Migden.
Thank you very much. Mr. Torlakson, we voted for your bill last year. It was a good bill, and we appreciate your earnest efforts to improve and refine the bill and enlist majority support. And we're prepared to vote for the bill and examine provisions and see if they exactly do what we intend to do and if there are questions. And I just want to add, there was sort of a rush for judgment on the part of this of the press, most particularly emanating out of the good friends from Los Angeles, to think that there was reluctance or some pressure asserted that would prevent us from doing the right thing, which is assuring that our children are safe and protected. I feel like there are 30 million people that go to parks, and because you have one accident doesn't necessarily mean they're unsafe, and there is a degree of risk, and I said this, still to be lambasted for it, but there is a degree of risk people assume in taking rides. When I was a kid, if a roller coaster didn't half throw you out, it wasn't fun. And that doesn't mean it should. So there is a risk-taking, there is a matter, and I had talked about bungee boards or ski accidents. There's some things that are daredevil activities. And I hope we can refine to make sure even